Hey everyone, my name is Mehul, and in this video we'll be taking a look at how we can build a complete but simple headless blog for your own website, for your own personal websites or your production websites using Next.js as the front and Ghost CMS as the backend technology. I also run a Codedamn YouTube channel and Codedamn.com as a platform. Feel free to give it a spin. You would be able to find all the links in the description. Let's get started with our project. In this whole 1 hour, we'll be covering how we can approach that and complete this project, deploy it on Vercel finally. Let's get into it. All right, so before actually starting, let's just take a look at a very quick practical use of what we are going to build. I actually use it myself on Codedamn.com, but you as an individual can use it pretty much anywhere where you want to have a unified experience in terms of blog and in terms of your main website as well. So as to speak, if you're building your whole website with Next.js, for example, and you're deploying it on Vercel, you don't have the luxury to, just deploy a different server on a different path. You can either deploy it on blog.website.com or maybe, you have to shift from Vercel and deploy it on your own custom server, which is not really recommended because it's a huge pain then. So what you can do instead is you can make use of Ghost as the backend for your blog. That means you're going to write all the blog articles, all the user management, all the tags and pages stuff would go in here. And the Next.js is going to act as your regular website, number one, which is, was the default thing. Plus, it could also act as a blog front for your main website. That is what you wanted, right? So in a nutshell, if I show you an example, this is a website developed with Next.js, and if you go to the dev news, this /news section is actually Next.js as well, but this is running Ghost behind the scenes. So I can actually go ahead and edit these articles without actually going into the code itself. So this is one of the advantages. You can mix Next.js, the core Next.js technology, plus have a Ghost based CMS on your website in terms of a blog or news or whatever you are doing. So that actually is nice to people who are browsing your website and just want to just take a look at your blog as well. So it's not a breaking experience for them. Anyway, let's get started and let's start with the new project very soon. All right, so let's start with a little bit of code in this video. I'm assuming that you have a little bit of experience with React because Next.js is basically 90% React and 10% the Next.js actual framework. So if not, then I would say just study a little bit about React first, and then we can go ahead and just start the project. So as to speak, let's start with the create next app, which is a sort of a boilerplate which Next.js ships, and it is very simple to get started with. So you're gonna write npx create next app and next app and hit enter. It's an interactive tool, so it's going to ask you for your project name and stuff like that. So in this, I'll just name it like Ghost CMS Next.js, something like that. You can name it anything you like. It's going to install all the dependencies, required dependencies and things. If you are using npm, you might see npm here, but for the most part, npm and yarn are the same things, right? So you can go ahead and follow along this whole series with npm as well, this whole video. So once you have that ready, you're going to see that you have a bunch of files. Let's just hop into VS Code. Again, I'll be using VS Code in this video, but if you have a different preference, that is absolutely fine as well. All right, so here is our basic file structure for Next.js. The first thing I want to do is actually convert this into a TypeScript project because honestly, TypeScript brings a lot of benefits when you're working with it. Even if you don't, use TypeScript to its full benefit, still you get stuff like autocomplete and auto imports out of the box, refactoring, all that stuff. And thankfully, in Next.js, it is very, very simple to convert a project to TypeScript. What you have to do is just go ahead. npm guys have to write npm install. Yarn guys have to just write yarn add TypeScript types node and types react, and just save them as developer dependencies. What this is going to do is enable your Next.js to use TypeScript to convert your TS files into the regular JavaScript files, right? Once you do that, you should be good to go. Just go ahead and rename the things appropriately. I'm gonna rename the files which include some JSX to .tsx, and the files which only include JavaScript can remain just .ts. It's fine, right? And yep, that's it. Also, we might just go ahead and switch to Sass, so because it just allows some of the nice features of CSS. I mean, just the extended features. So again, TypeScript, the Next.js framework actually ships with very good support for Sass, so that should not be a problem. And once we do that, what we need to do is just write yarn dev. In npm case, it would be npm run dev, which is going to pretty much just go ahead and fire this command right here, which says next dev. And you can see that on your first run, the Next.js would actually detect that you're using TypeScript, and it will automatically create a tsconfig file, which is very, very convenient again. And you don't really have to touch this file for the most part. Another thing which TypeScript and Next.js is saying to us is that we need Sass installed. So let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna use yarn add Sass because I'm using yarn, but if you're using npm, just go ahead and use that. And they do not really explicitly say here that this should be a developer dependency, but you can go ahead and put a dev flag here because you don't really need Sass on production. On production, you will be shipping the CSS bundles. So even if you write dev here, that is perfectly fine. Once you do that, instead of restarting your VS Code, just go ahead, press Command P on Mac, or I don't know about Windows, it should be Control P technically, or Control Shift P, but just get to this panel and write the TypeScript restart server, which should just restart the VS Code TypeScript server so that it detects the tsconfig JSON file, in the right way and does not complain about anything. Once you do that, you can go ahead and run yarn dev now, or npm run dev, whatever, and you can go ahead and visit this URL right here with you, and only if my Mac could afford 2 tabs of Chrome at the same time, but yeah, not a problem. Here we go. So once you do that, you're gonna see that you arrive at the welcome to Next.js regular page. That is fine. So yeah, I mean, we have just started with our project in this one, and let's continue on building on to this Next.js project. All right, so we just set up our Next.js blog, Next.js website, whatever we have done so far. It's time to actually set up Ghost CMS now, because at the end of the day, we are actually going to query that CMS, that software which is sitting somewhere else. So we need to deploy it somewhere. Now the question is, what should we do to do that? Now there are multiple approaches you can take at this point. First thing you can do is go ahead and sign up for DigitalOcean or AWS and deploy a simple server and install Ghost on it yourself and just get started. Another thing which I recommend is going off with something simpler like Heroku. Now what you can do is you can deploy a simple, not so powerful Heroku dyno using Ghost CMS. And the reason this would actually not be a problem at any scale, whether you are having a small blog or a very popular blog receiving millions of hits, this is because your front, the front at which people would be actually using the website, is going to be Next.js, right? And Next.js is not going to send the traffic all the time to the Ghost CMS. It's going to, just hit your backend server once, cache the result, that is, use the result already there, and maybe just expire it after 5-6 hours, and then hit your Ghost CMS again. So essentially, all the bullets, all the traffic would be handled by Next.js. Your Ghost CMS, this dyno, is only going to be your end, your personal end for, just using the admin side of the panel. So you could find this link in the description, which is a one-click deploy of Ghost on Heroku, which enables us to, just sit back and relax about the Ghost part at least and focus only on the Next.js deployment. Apart from this, just like I said, you can also go ahead and deploy a simple, Ghost server on a T2 Nano or T2 Micro, or maybe a $5 DigitalOcean instance if you want, but this is the simplest, the Heroku one. So I'm just going to click on deploy on Heroku, and this should take us to the Heroku dashboard where we can create a simple, Heroku is free. That is also one advantage, that you get a single dyno free on Heroku. So that's an advantage. So once you have that in place, what I'm going to do is just name it something like Ghost CMS, I don't know, Next.js backend, anything like that, right? So this needs to be unique, that's all. This could be anywhere, and you're gonna get all of this automatically. Then the next thing is that the public URL is, we're just gonna keep it the same because I'm gonna delete it anyway, so that does not matter. If you want to use S3 for Ghost, that is fine. You can go ahead and enter your credentials here. Actually, I would actually recommend that. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to go with this Cloudinary, which is another solution which just comes bundled for free. At least the starter pack is free with the Heroku system, which allows you to upload files. So this is fine. Everything is fine. And I wouldn't really touch anything else. And I'll just click on deploy app. So once you click on deploy app, it's going to take a couple of minutes and it's going to deploy the backend server of the Ghost CMS. Remember, this is the Ghost CMS we are talking. So this is 50% of the work, right? We still have to build the whole Next.js front by querying the Ghost CMS APIs. So yeah, it's just going to take some time and I'll be back when it's done. All right, so once you do that, you should get a message like this. And once you get that, if you click on the view, you're going to see that it takes you to Ghost CMS Next.js backend. In your case could be different. And this is the first time look for Ghost, right? Now, again, remember we are working with the CMS right now, not the Next.js. So I'm just going to, just set up this real quick blog. Nothing special, to be honest, because we are not going to be using this front at all, like ever, because this would be only for the editing and everything part, not really for people. So right now you see that we have a typical Ghost website on Heroku, which is not very powerful or would not be able to receive a lot of traffic, but this would do our job. So we have a bunch of posts with us already. So I'm not really going to edit that because that should be fine, at least for now. So this is our simple Ghost setup, right? Now what we want is we want to have this Next.js setup integrated tightly with this Ghost setup so that whatever content we are writing on our Ghost platform can be used on the Next.js front as well. And because we are now interacting with the help of APIs and everything, you can actually design your own blog from the very scratch as well. That is also a neat advantage where Ghost could take care of, heavy lifting of these features like post editor and all that tags and everything, and you can focus more on the designing aspect, how the things should look like and feel like to the user. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and let's just get started with the Next.js part now. Okay, first things first, now that we have Ghost CMS with us, number one, you can actually just forget about Heroku now because you don't really need it as long as you are in the free trial, and with a single instance you'll always be in a free trial, so that's not a problem. So we have a single instance of Ghost running with us now, and we have Next.js ready to be just have some great code. So what we want is we want a way to connect our Next.js application with the Ghost backend. That is done with the content API, which is a RESTful content API from the Ghost CMS, right? So to start, what we need to do is we need to actually create a custom application, that is a custom integration inside the Ghost CMS platform, which will actually enable us to query for that particular thing. So first thing is what I'm going to do is go to the integration section in the Ghost CMS, and I'm going to add a custom integration, right? And I'm going to say this is Next.js. You get an admin API key and you get a content API key, which would enable you to extract out the post and the post and the titles, images, stuff like that without actually scraping the page, because we don't really want to scrape our own website, right? What's the point in that? So that is all well and good, but one more thing I would recommend is that just go to labs and just click on Let's see. Maybe it's not in labs, it's in general. Yeah, just click on this, make this site private. Now, why you want to do that? You can just choose any password 12345 in this case, choose a better one. But why you want to do that is you don't really want people to figure out your backend URL and then access the content that way. Now that is also fine if people figure it out, but where it might hurt you is that if Google figure it out, because then in that case what would happen is that Google might mark your content as duplicate on the other websites. So you want this site to be non-indexable and just keeping it out of reach from the people, from the Google and the people. So once that is done and you have your API keys with you, let's just save the settings first. So once that is done, we have the API keys. Let's start with the Next.js setup now. All right, so now let's just go ahead and set up the infrastructure we will need to extract out posts and articles from the Ghost CMS. So what I'm going to do is just show you the file structure which it looks like. I've just removed the API folder for now and just trimmed down some of the files, not really much. But yes, here we are. And what we want to do next is we want to set up some code which enables us to use the content API key. That is this key right here, because this would be used for extracting out the content. So I'm just gonna say content API key right here. Technically this would go into environment variables. So when you're pushing to production, or when we'll be pushing to production, I'll just shift this to the environment variables thing, but I'm just gonna keep it here for now. So as to just, we don't waste a lot of time on configuration stuff. So once we have that in place, what we want to do is we want to have some way to actually extract out the content from our API, from our Ghost CMS API. So for that, number one thing is that we need to have a static props function in our Next.js implementation. Now this is because what we want to really do is we want to get the post before we actually show the user this content, right? So we will have a static props which is going to dynamically fetch the latest post, that is the home page, how it should look like, and it's going to inject that as props in our main component, where we can map over those posts and then display them one by one inside a block, right? Let's just go ahead and remove this for the time being because we don't really need this at all. And what we want to do is we want to somehow get the post here. So I'm going to say const post is await get post, which is a function which we can just create in a moment. And then what we want to return is, as props, I want to return posts as the one of the props, right? So that we can, and actually we want the props to have a post key. So when we receive our props here, what I can say is that actually let's just go ahead and change this a little bit. So I'm going to say home is a functional component which brings in the props of post, which is of type post, something like this. If it does not make sense, just give me a second. I'll just clean up things here real quick. Is props, and it is an arrow function, and we want to export default this home component. Alright, so this is a type post, which could be pretty much how our post is going to look like. Now I have tried to look up for the official, some sort of Ghost API thing, but there's not really a very good solution to that. So that's why we are just going all the way from scratch for retrieving the content. So that should not be a problem. But anyway, let's just go ahead and see what this get post function should look like, right? First of all, because we want this to be, this would be fetching post over the network, so we'll just make it asynchronous. With that being done, what we want to do is we also want to have our blog URL in place. In our case, it is going to be this one, right? So we have deployed it on the Ghost CMS. So this is what it's going to be. So this is our blog URL. And now we need to make fetch request to get the post for this blog, right? So if we take a look at the Ghost API for this, you're going to see that we actually get all the post using the get content/post endpoint, right? But this endpoint is actually, the full endpoint is something like this, which involves Ghost API version 3 and then content. So let's just go ahead and copy this example. And right here, I'm just going to paste it as a comment because we don't really want to use this as it is. But what I'm going to say is I'm going to say result is await fetch. Now we don't really need to install isomorphic fetch or anything like that because Next.js automatically gives it to us in the environment, both on server side and on client side. So once we have fetch, we're going to have pretty much a very simple get request with us. Just that we're going to replace this whole thing right here with our blog URL, number one. Then Ghost API version 3 content is fine. Number two, this is also fine. We want to get all the post. And the key is going to be content API key, right? So once we have the result, I want to convert that result to JSON. And because we have a single promise in place, we should be good to go, right? So if I go here and console log this thing, what's going to happen is we're going to see whatever Ghost actually returns us from this endpoint, this whole endpoint. So we are calling get posts in get static props, and then we are finally passing it as the props. We already are console logging it here, so we don't really need to console log it inside the component. So we can just go ahead and say hello, just like that. So now if we go ahead and take a look at the Next.js blog, we see that we have some errors because I guess we are not returning the result, but that is just fine because we are not really using it as well. But where we really want to take a look is the Next.js server, right? So you can see in the Next.js console where the Next.js was running, we have some JSON. Let's just go ahead and actually I messed up my shortcuts for VS Code some time back. So anyway, let's just go ahead and start the server again because why the hell not? And once we reload the page, you're going to see that obviously we get the hello, but we also get a JSON payload showing us the amount of blog posts which we have so far, right? So we have these many blog posts right now at the moment, and we have all the information for those blog posts as well. So once we have that, what we want is, let's just go ahead and take out only the titles for the blog post because that is essentially what you will want on the home page, honestly. So I'm going to just say, because you see post is an array, right, of objects. So I'm just going to map over to a single post and I'm going to extract post.title, and that is what I'm going to return, right? Oops. This should be titles, and we have titles and titles like that, right? Once we have that in place, we can actually now go ahead and take a look what's happening with our console. Refresh. Let me just go ahead and place it actually closer to the code. And we get res is not a function. So let's just console log and see what's really going on here. So we see that res is actually an object, not a function really. And I'm telling you, this is actually killing me. It's an object with a post key, so makes sense. So we're gonna have res.post right here, and we're gonna map over, we're gonna map over that. Actually, let me just go ahead and shift this to a real terminal because at least I can just command key and clear the whole thing. So anyway, let's just refresh it one more time. We see we get hello, and we see we get all the post titles as well for us. Now we are getting that titles in terms of posts, so we can also go ahead and rename that, and I can just say that this, instead of being a post, it's just a string for now, and I can say my posts are inside the props, and finally I can say hello to my blog, and I can just go ahead and say it's an unordered list. We can obviously improve that, but I'm going to say post.map post return li inside a post, right? And just to give it a key, we can have an index here because we'll not be sorting or reordering it right now, so that's fine. And once we do that, you can see we get a nice little interface which says hello to my blog and with a bunch of titles for the post, right? So that would be all. And let's just go ahead for the titles and let's just go ahead and link them to individual posts so that we can actually open them and browse around as well. All right, let's just go ahead and start with our individual blog post. But before that, let's just do a quick little optimization. That is just returning the fields which we want on the index page, because you can see right now we are returning basically everything. If I can just show you the output now. If we go ahead and take a look at, just console log the result, what you're gonna see is that we actually return everything, including the HTML of the post as well, which is not really required on the home page, right? At max, we might just need custom excerpt, right? Not more than that. So let's just go ahead and limit that. So you can go ahead and use the Ghost API again to make use of the fields as the query parameter to limit the things. And we can just say we want title, we want the URL, obviously, because that would be required. Let's see what else we want. Technically, we don't really want the URL, we want the slug because our URL would be different. So I'm gonna make use of URL there. Then we also want the, let's see, do we want the excerpt? Yes, maybe we want that. And maybe you also want the reading time if you're trying to, just show how much time the article would take on average to complete. So, you can do that. You can also take out the featured image if you want to display image, but I'm just gonna leave that for now. So that's pretty much it. What we want for the home page. If we go ahead and refresh it now, you're gonna see that we have a much smaller payload with us, and yeah, the output is still the same. So with the slug, we have, what we can do is turn this li, or maybe not really turn, but just make use of link inside this li. And link is a Next.js element. It's going to be a link. Well, autocomplete's not very helpful right now, so you're going to import it manually with the next link. But what this would allow us is to send the person to a post with a slug, right? Which would be something like post and the post.slug. Time to rename this. This would be title as string and slug as string. And then we're going to make sure that we are returning a post as well from here. And finally, we don't really want the post title. We just want the posts to be returned because we are doing the filtering right here, right on this point. So, yep, I think this should be, this should be fine. Let's just rename this to posts, this one too. And I think we did not get the excerpt, right? Because that was custom excerpt. All right, let's just see if we get it now. React our children only expected to receive a single element. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we want an anchor tag because link needs an anchor tag for that, and we also need a title here. Our key could now be a slug, and yeah, we are good to go. So now if we take a look, you're gonna see we get still these tags, still these list items, but now they are actual links. But obviously you can see that if I click on any one of them, that is a 404 page because we don't really have anything to serve that. So let's just go ahead and create an individual post page for individual posts, right? Okay, so once we are on this point, what we can do is go ahead and make use of the Next.js dynamic routes functionality, which essentially mean that we can just create a folder called post because that's what we are linking on. And I can just go ahead and create a file called slug.tsx. Now make sure you make use of these brackets inside of the name, because that is how Next.js actually knows that this is a dynamic URL, not a static one. So once we have that, what we can do is, first of all, let's just go ahead and create const post is a React functional component, right? We're gonna receive some props, but for the time being, I'm just gonna return hello again. And let's just export default our post, right? Nothing exciting so far, but this should at least get us started with 404 thing. So now we can just go ahead, maybe even throw in a backlink link from next link and my blog post. Once you do that, you can just say link href this, go back, and inside an a tag, because the previous practice has been deprecated. So you can just click on go back, click on another post, go back, click on another post. And mind you, this seems slow in the development, but this would be super fast in the production, because Next.js will actually pre-render all these blog posts and pages. So anyway, let's just populate this blog post now, how we can get that. So we're gonna have a bunch of things again. Actually, it would be a good time to actually move it to environment now. So I'm gonna have an env file only. I think Next.js supports the .env file out of the box, but I'm not really sure about the name. Nope. That was introduced in Next.js 9.4. And yes, .env is supported. Okay, so let's just go ahead and take out both of them. Content API key is this, and the blog URL. Well, technically you don't really need to have blog URL in environment, but it's fine. So now you can just go ahead and say content API key. Both are from process.env, right? Similar thing here as well. Now we want to have a function get post, where we'll have a slug. That is the slug of this particular post. That is what we'll receive from Next.js. And what we want is that we want to have the same API, more or less. We'll just take a look at what is going to happen. So for now, let's just go ahead and take a look at the content API again, and take a look at what happens if we try to get a post by the slug, right? Because that is what we want. So we had the API of get/content/post/slug. So again, it will just return us pretty much what was being returned earlier, but this time with only a single element in the post array. That's fine. So let's just go ahead and make this request. So we want post slug and then the actual slug, right? The key is same. The fields this time would be title, slug, not really custom excerpt, but I'll want the HTML of the post. Is that right? Yes, that is right. So we have the HTML this time, and yeah, you can just grab out the created ad, updated ad as well. If you want to show dates, you can grab out feature images. Again, depends on how deep you want to create, how deep you are willing to go. But for now, I'm just going to leave it right here. So this should be fine. Once we have the get post, again, we're going to just make use of the get static props here. With the difference that because we are using get static props in a dynamic file, we also need to implement the paths where it could actually fire this get static props. I'll just tell you about that in a minute. But right now we want params.slug. Params is basically, contains all the dynamic parts of the URL, and params.slug would be automatically populated by Next.js to include the whatever slug which we are visiting, right? So post it is number one. We have the post. We just saw that the REST API for this single post is going to still return post, but this time I just want the first one because there would be only a single one if there's a post for that slug. So once we have that, we can pretty much go ahead and maybe just console log it here so that at least we can just view it in the browser terminal. Because if we do a console log here or here, it will just appear in the node terminal. So once you refresh this, only absolute URLs are supported. Very well. And yeah, this is because if you set the env file, you have to actually restart the server. And our server is running right here. So it's just a one-time thing. If you're running env, you can see that it loads it before it actually starts the server. So that's why. But anyway, once you do that, click on this link and we're gonna see an error. That is exactly what we'll expect because we do not have get static paths yet defined for our code. Now get static paths is actually going to limit what URLs, what slugs which we can visit, but don't let it fool you into some sort of restriction for this. Let's see what do I mean by that. So what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna return an object which says that paths is empty, number one. Number two is we're gonna say fallback is true. Now what do I mean by that? Well, you could just go ahead and look it up in the Next.js talks, but I'll be just quick here. So the paths array would contain, the slugs which are allowed, right? And in our case, I just say that no slug is allowed, which is not exactly what we want. Hence the option fallback. Now fallback means that if something is not present in the paths by default, do not really discard that as 404, but just hold on and try to fire get static props for that particular function, right? Try to fire get static props for that particular function and see that if we can extract some valuable data. If not, then obviously 404, but if yes, then go ahead and show that. Let's just take a look at what that creates, what that effect creates for us. So now you can see that the error is gone. The error is no longer here, but you can see that in the console, after a little while, we get this post. So if you were just a little observant, you can see we do not have post yet. Our content is rendered, but our post arrives a little bit late. So what's happening? Well, you can see that when you use fallback true, Next.js says that, okay, I'm gonna give get static props a chance to actually update the component. But meanwhile, I'm not gonna let the user wait for any content. So I'm gonna go ahead and just throw this page to the user. Just make sure that you're showing some sort of loading component or anything, and I'll dynamically load the props. All right, so how do we fix that? To fix that, we're just gonna grab the router from Next.js, and I have no idea why next router anything is not working at all. And I think this is a single import. Yep. So now I can just say if router is and this is router, not router, is fallback. Whenever this property is true, I'm gonna just return loading, because at this point what's happening is that server is actually executing this method on the server side and client is waiting for the post to arrive. Now mind you that in the development time it would happen on every request, right? But on the production, when this is deployed, this function, this thing would happen only once per production deployment, right? Because the next subsequent times Next.js is going to save this page. It's going to save this page literally on the file system. It's not going to cache it. It's going to save it on the system so that whenever you arrive at the same slug again, it just delivers that page without actually hitting the server. That is our Ghost CMS. So our Ghost CMS request is made inside get static props, right? For example, if you are on hello world on production, what's going to happen on first request, Ghost CMS is made, Ghost CMS call is made, but for hello world on other requests, Ghost CMS is not made. Instead, the file system is called, right? Because we have the file already saved. So one call for the Ghost CMS and a million calls for your visitors of blog. So this is why essentially you don't really need a very powerful Ghost CMS on the backend. That is why I was saying that. Anyway, once you have this set up with us, if we go ahead and refresh now, what you're going to see is we get loading as long as we do not see this post. And once we have that post with us, bingo, that's it. So, well, for the first time fetching, we can obviously have this because when you are creating new articles on your backend with Ghost CMS, people are going to see this, or not really people, but a single person is going to see this. And from that point onwards, you can just, go ahead and use it as a regular static page. But once we have done that, at this point, you're going to see that we have the post, we have the slug, HTML, and title. So let's just go ahead and actually, I'm just curious if I can just go ahead and use the home module only inside this, right? So we're just going to say class name is styles.container. That's what it was, I believe. Yes. So we have this again with us. And now what I can do is go ahead and just say div. And here's a little, I would say a place where some people might get uncomfortable. But what we are going to do is we're going to inject the HTML using dangerously set inner HTML right here. And I'll just tell you why this is not exactly a problem, because yeah, let me just go ahead and explain myself once I set this up. So yeah, post is another post for us. And this time our post type could be title string, HTML string, and slug string. I hope that's right. Yeah. So we can just go ahead and say post.html. Alright, so the reason I believe this is not wrong, honestly, because this HTML on the backend, which is coming, is 100% controllable by you, right? The reason dangerously set inner HTML is bad is because this might be controlled. Sometimes this might be controlled by attackers, or sometimes this might be controlled by users, right? In this situation, 100% of the time, this post.html is coming from your backend on your Ghost CMS platform, which is owned by you. So this is not a problem as per se, but again, it might make some people uncomfortable. But Ghost CMS, as far as I know, does not have any options for markdown or stuff like that. So this is the approach which we can take at the moment. So we don't really see anything just yet. Let's see why is that. We have our post with us from the props, and post.html is in fact just a valid thing. So let's see. All right. Okay, so yeah, I just figured out that this is a responsiveness problem. We have way too many large images. So let's just make sure we have a little bit of global styles in place, which could just take care of that. So I'm just going to say maximum width 100%. And that should just take care of that, right? Anyway, so this is our blog post, which looks like this at the moment, right? All this content is fetched by Next.js. We can just throw in an img of height auto so that these images are not really stretched that much. But, you get the idea. So if you go back and click on publishing options, you're going to get something like this. Again, we can just go ahead and replace the my blog post with an actual post.title, right? So that it makes more sense. So now if we take a look, go back and welcome to Ghost, you're going to see that we get a nice little post for ourselves, and you can actually go ahead and, go to the post section, welcome to Ghost, and you can edit this thing. as this, update the article, go back to Next.js, refresh, and boom, that is updated. So you manage your articles with a great backend and you show them to the users with a great front end. So this is the combination I was talking about. Anyway, once we are done with this article, let's just go back, style this a little bit, and add a little bit of comments magic as well to our section. Okay, everyone, so just made a quick little changes, just gave it a some space to breathe. And if you take a look at individual posts, just made sure that go back is now on left. That's how it was intended to, right? So anyway, we can just go ahead and take a look at what's up with these large aligned pictures, and obviously just take a look what really the actual post look like, and remove that, delete that, stuff like that. But anyway, what we want to do eventually in this article, in this video, is add comments to our blog post, right? Because just like I said, without comments the blog looks dull. So let's just go ahead and do that with Discuss. Now Discuss is a very popular commenting system, and because we really want to avoid all the costs, that is the database cost for hosting and storing comments, as well as the infrastructure cost for hosting that API, the whole thing. So we can make use of Discuss. It has a very generous free tier as well, which should get you just started. So I'm gonna say I want to install Discuss on my website after visiting discuss.com. And what it's going to do is take me through a quick little wizard. So I'm just gonna say this would be, let's say, not really GraphQL. This would be Ghost CMS, and what's the next thing? Next.js, right? Select any category, does not really matter a lot. And once you create the website, what we need to do is just go ahead and subscribe to the basic plan for the moment. And let's just see with the universal code, because we are integrating it ourselves. So what we want is we want the following thing to go, but if you want, you can restrict it to the point when somebody clicks on the comments to load, then only they load, right? So we're going to do exactly that. We are not just going to just force Discuss on their faces. They can just go ahead and say that they want to load the comment, and then they can, load the comments. So I'm going to just go with the go back styles only, because it has that left aligned with itself. And I'm going to say not really link, just a simple anchor, or maybe not really a simple anchor as well. We don't really need that also. So yeah, I mean, we can go ahead and keep that, not a problem. Or yeah, I'm actually confused. So let's just go ahead and move that anyway. So what we want is just say load comments here. And whenever somebody clicks on this, on click, what should happen is load comments should fire, right? And what this load comment is a function which is going to load Discuss, right? And our Discuss code is right here, which is what we copied from the website. So it's not very elegant, right? And let's see. All right, so first thing which we see here is we need a place for Discuss to load. So that's not really a problem. Let's just throw that right here, right? Number two is, let's see, the beautiful comments is actually screwing up the text which we need to read. So let's just go ahead and comment that out. So number two is we need to have a Discuss configuration in place. So this is our Discuss configuration. Let's just make it a const. This .page URL is going to be our page's canonical variable, right? So our page's canonical variable could be pretty much, you can just go ahead and use window.location.href if you want, or you can construct it using the slug which we have, right? That is also fine. The page identifier could definitely be our post.slug, right? And this is our Discuss config, done and dusted. Then after this, we need to fire this function, which is basically doing nothing but inserting a script tag with this src, right? So let's just simplify this a little bit, because we don't really want too much of this complication here. So let's just say our script is document.createElement script. Script.src is this thing, right? And then it wants a set attribute as well, like this, script.setAttribute, and it's going to complain. Next is going to complain. Yep. So instead of this, we can just use state.now as well, .toString, because essentially if you take a look at new date, it's going to return you the string. If you forcefully try to convert it into integer, it's going to return you this UTC timestamp. And date not now is basically the same thing, right? So instead of using this hack, we can also use date not now, and .toString actually converts it into a string so that we can use it inside an attribute as a value, and TypeScript does not complain. Not a lot of things going on here, but yeah, I hope that was something you understood. And yeah, once we did that, I think there's nothing more to do here, and that should be it. So once we actually fire this, what's going to happen is that this discuss config is defined with a var keyword. So probably this script is going to look for the window.discuss config. So we probably want this as on the window object so that it can initialize it. All right, so once we have that in place, this should be working fine. Let's just go ahead and click on this load comments and wait for a while. And let's hope the discuss loads. Checking the console, we don't have a lot of things, but yeah, let's just refresh it once and see if it works. Then go down, click on load comments. Inside networks, we don't have any activity, to be honest. And nope, nothing's happening. Oh, because we are not document.body.append child script. Yeah, that's the last missing piece. And one last thing which you want to do is you want to enable load comments, set enabled load comments to be only present for the first time. And this should be rather true, right? So you want to have this link on the page only the first time, right? Once you click on this, you want to set enable load comments to false so that you are not able to click it multiple times. And one last thing which I really want to do is just make sure that this go back is actually having a cursor of pointer. So once we have that in place, let's just go ahead and click on this. It automatically goes away just like we expect, and we get a nice little commenting section for us. But why is it so small? I have no idea for that. So let's just go ahead and take a look. And let's see, not really helping. So I'm just gonna zoom out a little, don't mind me. And where's our iframe? This is discuss thread. We can go ahead and give it a width of 100%, right? Yep. So let's just go ahead and give the discuss thread a little bit of styling. Discuss thread with 100%, margin 20 pixel 0. This should just give it a little bit of space as well. And one more thing which you can really do, which is going to enhance your experience, which I just found in the discuss, is that you can just go ahead and only if I can just take a look, you can just go ahead and actually I'm lost. Let me just go ahead and go to settings, and yeah, inside the reactions, yes, enable the reactions. Once you enable the reactions, you get this nice little feature, which is people can now actually react on your things. So if you load comments, it's going to load it, and looks like it's not really enabled yet. I'm not really sure. You don't really have to do a lot of things. Once that is enabled, it works automatically. But yeah, if you load the comments, go down, yeah, there you see. So now people can actually leave reactions, and it's a pretty decent thing, right? Which ships with Discuss out of the box. I actually like it. So anyway, you have added Discuss, that is the commenting, on your website next with Next.js as well, which is obviously dynamically loading so as to not really disturb any person who does not really want unnecessary scripts loading on the page, and still maintains that fast experience of a blog. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And for the comments part, and let's just now see how we can really deploy this on the Vercel. Okay, so before actually deploying on Vercel, one very important part of the equation is to have the revalidate parameter in place. Why is that? Because you want to revalidate the page generation to pick up changes, or if anything is changed. So what you want to do is, with props here, you want to pass in a revalidate parameter and set it to something like 10 seconds or 50 seconds or 60 seconds, whatever you think is right. You can also set it to a few minutes, or if you're somebody who makes changes rarely to any block, you can also set it to a few hours. What this revalidate parameter would essentially do is, after this much amount, at least after this much amount, if there's a visit, Next.js would try to fetch the new thing. That is, it would try to run the get static props in the background at least once, at most once in this duration. So if you have 10, Next.js would run at most one request to the Ghost CMS in the backend, right? That means it will still respond with the correct blog HTML, but if anything is changed, it would reflect in at most 10 seconds, right? Not really at most 10 seconds, but the fastest it could reflect that is in 10 seconds, right? So this allows you to not really put a lot of pressure on the backend as well, because now you are keeping it in cache for some time. Similar thing for the index page as well. We want to revalidate this one as well. So I'm going to say revalidate this every 10 seconds again. And that should be it. So we are ready to rock and roll it on the production. Now, to deploy it on Vercel, we're going to need Vercel CLI. Choose your package manager, npm or yarn, and go ahead and install Vercel. Now, once you do Vercel installation, what would really happen is that inside your terminal, inside your CLI, let me just go ahead and use this one instead. You can access Vercel as Vercel or Vercel as VC as well. So this support is provided by default, right? So what you really want to do is, once you are at this particular stage, you just want to hit VC and hit enter. What's going to happen is Vercel is now going to take you through the process of deploying it on the Vercel, and it's also going to deploy it in the staging. Right now, it's not going to deploy it to the production. And yeah, set up and deploy Ghost CMS. Yes, we want to. Which scope you want to. And actually, one more thing, you might actually need to log in first with Vercel. And how you're going to log in is by writing this command right here, that is VC login, right? And once you do that, you have to enter your email. Then Vercel would send you a secret code on the email. You have to confirm that, and you would be logged into Vercel CLI. Once you have done the login part, then you can simply write VC, nothing else, in the project root, and you're gonna be, on a similar screen which I am on. So yeah, I want to deploy it on my hobby account. I do not want to link it to an existing project. This is a new one, so it would be just Ghost CMS on Next.js. And this is the root directory in which our code is located. Pretty simple. Vercel takes care of all the Next.js building and everything. It's going to take some time in building the project. You can see that if you go to vercel.com, your project would be building. That is, Ghost CMS on Next.js. If you go to the deployments, you could see that it is actually building right now. You can follow along the logs as well, and it's actually done because we are not really doing a lot of things, honestly. So that's why it was so quick. But nonetheless, once it's done, it's ready to visit. When you click on visit, you're going to see that you have Ghost CMS on Next.js Vercel, and you pretty much have the same look on our blog. Now, if I click on, welcome to Ghost, you can see it immediately clicks on that and loads accordingly. Go back, writing post with Ghost, immediate loading, super quick, super easy. Publishing again. Comments would also work just fine. If you click on load comments, this would just work fine. If you give it a love reaction, and if you reload, you're gonna see your reaction actually stays right there, stored. Go back, and basically you can go back to the Ghost CMS. Where's our blog? Well, here it is, and I can just go ahead and create a new post, new post, and I can just throw in some emoji. Let's see, bolt, not really bolt, electric power. Okay, I'm bad at that, but anyway, this would just work fine. This is my new post with Next.js as front and Ghost as back, right? Go ahead, hit publish. Now you might see that it's not immediately live on, not really on localhost, on your Ghost blog, but you can see after a bunch of refreshes, within 10 seconds, we get our new post, right? And again, if you try to edit this, update this, Next.js is going to update this automatically because we have a revalidate parameter in the background, and you can see it just happens just like that. You can load comments, you can go back. Basically, you have your own personal blog, which is super fast, which is super nice to look, which feels super great without spending anything at all. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's what was the motivation for this video. Hopefully you were able to follow along and complete this.